Hey everyone, it's Mark. We all know that Jessie, James, and Meowth have been a part of the anime from the very beginning. Well, episode 2 to be exact. And ever since then, they've traveled to all the same regions as Ash and caught a ton of different Pokemon along the way. Nowadays, we're stuck with everyone's favorite gimmick, the Rocket Prize Master. But before this device was introduced into the show, Jessie and James caught a total of 27 different Pokemon, and in this video, I'm gonna rank all of them from worst to best. If you're wondering where I got this list of 27 Pokemon from, let's take a quick look at Bulbapedia's helpful list of the Pokemon that these two Team Rocket legends have each caught. Most of them are permanent captures, but there are a few random ones that you may have forgotten about. Those ones do make the list, but crucially I want to point out one Pokemon that isn't on this list, and that's Meowth. Of course, Meowth is both a member of Team Rocket and a Pokemon, but he's not a Team Rocket Pokemon because he's never been caught by anyone, and this list is specifically about the 27 Pokemon that Jessie and James have caught, and anyways, even if Meowth was included in this ranking, we all know he would be number 1. So where's the suspense in that? Oh yeah, and Beware and Stuffle were also on this list, but are clearly listed as befriended, not caught, so they're out too. Without further ado, let's get this ranking started. Make sure you hit like and subscribe to my channel, and let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with my rankings. Here are all 27 of Team Rocket's Pokemon, ranked from worst to best. Number 27, Jessie's Porygon 0. Ah yes, episode 38 of the Pokemon anime, the one that caused hundreds of Japanese children to suffer epileptic seizures and nearly got the anime cancelled entirely. That's some way to start this list. One of the little known details about this episode is that Jessie caught a Porygon in it. Well, before it actually. The basic plot of the episode was that Team Rocket were inside a computer program stealing Pokemon that were being transferred through the PC system, and they had stolen a prototype called Porygon 0 to help them. We'll skip the whole flashing lights incident because no one needs to see any strobe lights, and cut to the end of the episode where Team Rocket make it back into the real world and quickly escape, leaving their newly caught Porygon behind. Unsurprisingly, it was never seen or heard from again, and for that, it gets the distinct honor of being the worst Pokemon that Jessie or James has ever owned. Congratulations! Number 26, James's Hoppip. Hoppip is the first of many Pokemon on the bottom half of this list that have some kind of connection to the Magikarp salesman, so you'll be hearing a lot about this guy. Towards the end of Ash's Hoenn journey, James really wanted to catch a Chimecho, and when this con artist offered to sell him one, James couldn't pass up on the opportunity. Of course, this Chimecho turned out to be fake, and was actually a poorly disguised Hoppip. After its cover was blown, Hoppip escaped by floating away and score 1 to the Magikarp salesman. By the way, I should mention that like 5 episodes before this one, Jessie got swindled into buying a Magikarp herself, but for some reason it's not listed on Bulbapedia under the list of Pokemon owned by Jessie. So it may not get its own entry on this list, but rest assured that it would be right on par with James's Hoppip. Number 25, Jessie's Mawile. There's actually a little backstory to this one. Throughout XY, Team Rocket was always fascinated with trying to get a Pokemon that can Mega Evolve, thinking that it would help their evil schemes. During Karina's Mega Evolution arc, they saw Mawile Mega Evolve, and fast forward to XY episode 82, Jessie was offered a Mawile in a trade in exchange for her Pumpkaboo. At first, she flat out refused, stating how much she loves her Pumpkaboo. More on her later. After this Count Pumpka guy reminded them that Mawile can Mega Evolve, all that sentimental stuff went out the window, and Jessie accepted the trade. To Team Rocket's surprise, Pumpkaboo evolved straight after the trade. I guess none of these guys had ever played the games before. It's pretty common knowledge that Gourgeist is a trade evolution, and suddenly the Count wanted nothing to do with it. Jessie was outraged by this, and all that sentimental stuff that just went out the window came flying back in, as Jessie and Gourgeist embrace after they redo the trade. So much for that Mawile. I guess in an alternate universe, Jessie's Mega Mawile could have been way higher up this list, but it just wasn't to be. Number 24, Jessie's Shelder. Episode 66 was just another filler episode to waste time prior to Ash challenging the Pokemon League, and the main plot of the episode was about how Slowpoke evolved. Cut to Team Rocket on the beach where they actually caught a Pokemon normally for once. Well, actually, James did all the work battling Shelder, only for Jessie to swoop in and catch it herself. Minutes later, Jessie's new Shelder gets caught up in the action with this Slowpoke, and surprise surprise, it clamps onto its tail, causing it to evolve. The newly evolved Slowbro sends Team Rocket blasting off again, and Jessie's Shelder was never seen again, having fused with this random Slowpoke. Is that how evolution works? I guess that was the whole point of the episode, huh? Number 23, James's Gyarados. Remember how I said the Magikarp salesman was going to show up a lot in this list? Well, let's go back to his first ever appearance to find out why he's known as the Magikarp salesman. Back in episode 15, James was sold an absolute dream by this guy. The Magikarp salesman explained how buying one single Magikarp was essentially a get-rich-quick scheme, and James blew his entire wallet on one. He didn't regret this decision as quickly as some of his other reckless purchases, but by the end of the following episode, he was fed up with this useless carp and released it into the ocean. Immediately following its release, Magikarp evolved, summoned a horde of other Gyarados, and basically tried to kill everyone. Another instance of what could have been for Team Rocket. Maybe James's purchase could have been worth it if he had just kept and trained his Magikarp. Number 22, James's second Victory Bell. Wait, James had 2 Victory Bell? Oh yeah, this was another Magikarp salesman encounter gone wrong. Towards the end of the original series, James was not going to get fooled by this scammer again, but Jessie and Meowth pressured him into trading his Victory Bell for the Magikarp salesman's Weepin' Bell, because apparently it knew sweet scent, and that was going to attract all kinds of Pokemon to Team Rocket. Solid plan. It randomly evolved later in the episode, and when it started showing Jessie affection the same way James's old Pokemon did, Jessie sent James's second Victory Bell flying, never to be seen again. Well, there is a little more to that story, but we'll get to that later. Number 21, Jessie's Frillish. Oh good, we finally made it to the portion of the list made up of Pokemon that Jessie and James actually permanently owned for a period of time, and the worst of such Pokemon in my opinion was Jessie's Frillish. We never saw it get captured or anything, it just randomly appeared on Jessie's team one episode and was gone 33 episodes later when she turned in her Unova Pokemon at Team Rocket HQ. To be fair to Frillish, it did have a pretty decent moveset with moves like Psychic and Shadow Ball, but it proved to be the weaker of Team Rocket's secondary Unova Pokemon. Speaking of which, Number 20, James's Amoonguss. So yeah, Amoonguss got the same raw deal as Frillish, having been added to Team Rocket's party without any explanation towards the tail end of the Best Wishes series, but Amoonguss was notably strong in battle. I mean, it did knock Pikachu out with just one body slam. Okay, this is Best Wishes Pikachu we're talking about here, but still. Amoonguss gets bonus points for being a solid battler, but I can't put it any higher on this list due to the fact that it was James's only Grass-type Pokemon that never showed its trainer any PDA, painful displays of affection. Number 19, Jessie's Lickitung. Jessie caught Lickitung during the original adventure through Kanto, and to be honest, it wasn't really used much, only making sporadic appearances throughout the rest of Kanto and the Orange Islands. It was always secondary to Arbok, and it wasn't long into Johto that Jessie ended up accidentally trading away Lickitung to this random guy named Benny, and it was never seen again. More on that a little later. Lickitung itself wasn't that bad, and it could have had potential, but a lack of screen time means I can't put it any higher on this list. Number 18, James's Growlithe. Okay, so James has never used Growlithe as an actual team member, but it's hard not to have a soft spot for Growly. Apparently, Growly was James's only friend as a little kid, but James left it behind when he ran away from home. Growly's doghouse is so big that Ash and friends thought it was a human mansion. Its relationship with James is so wholesome, but Growlithe has only ever appeared in just 2 episodes, which is a shame. Despite not being able to see James very often, Growly still remains loyal and devoted to him. Such a good boy. Number 17, Jessie's Woobat, and number 16, James's Yamask. Let's speed things up by tackling 2 Pokemon at a time. I already mentioned Team Rocket's other Unova Pokemon, but at least Woobat and Yamask were both part of the team for nearly the entire series. With that said, neither of these Pokemon really had that much development, and they both remained unevolved for the entirety of Best Wishes. For the one series where Team Rocket were treated like legitimate villains, it would have been cool to see them get some really strong Pokemon that could have helped them become serious threats. Instead, it was the usual fare, and James's Yamask gets the higher ranking out of the pair because 1, Jessie caught her Woobat off screen, that's how unimportant it was, and 2, James's Yamask had a little more personality than Woobat, but it is fine margins down here in the bottom half of these rankings. Number 15, James's Carnivine. The backstory here is that James apparently caught Carnivine in Sinnoh's Great Marsh when he was just a little kid, and somehow Carnivine's Pokeball just so happened to be left at James's parents' vacation home in Sinnoh, and that's how this thing ended up getting onto James's team. Carnivine had the usual characteristics of one of James's grass types. It wasn't very strong in battle, but it did affectionately hurt its trainer at every opportunity possible. Jessie even used Carnivine in several contests, including the Grand Festival, which was pretty cool. But to be honest, I've always treated Carnivine as a less interesting Cacnea, but maybe that's just me. Number 14, James's Chimecho. Chimecho may have only been on James's team for a little over 60 episodes during the Advanced Generation series, but it did make an impression on me during that short time frame. It was a feel-good story from the start. James had always wanted to catch himself with Chimecho, and it felt like it was just meant to be when the Wind Chime Pokemon showed up out of thin air and agreed to join James's team. James loved Chimecho so much. Even when Jessie convinced him to let her use Chimecho in a contest, James could barely watch it battle and just hope Chimecho didn't get hurt. Its way of showing affection for its trainer was far less painful than some of James's other Pokemon, but nonetheless adorable. Chimecho's time in the anime was cut short during the Battle Frontier Saga in Kanto, in what is still to this day a very emotional episode where James had to leave behind a Pokemon that he cared for so much in order to let it rest and heal. I mean, the real reason it left the show was because they wanted to use Mime Jr. to hype the upcoming 4th generation, so they just swapped James's Psychic-type Pokemon. But don't let that stop you from remembering all the good times James and Chimecho shared. Number 13, James's Inkay. We're into the top half of this ranking now, and every Pokemon left has some serious history in the anime, having been with Jessie or James for a long time. Inkay was James's only Kalos Pokemon, and this dark psychic dual type was the perfect mix of cute and mischievous. Inkay could squirt ink as an alternative form of attack, and it played a crucial role in that storyline involving those evil Malamar. Like a lot of James's Pokemon, I thought it would have been cool to see Inkay evolve one day, but it did remain unevolved for the entire XY series before James left it at Team Rocket HQ before jetting off to Alola. Number 12, Jessie's Gourgeist. Team Rocket's Kalos Pokemon are right next to each other on this list, and I've got Jessie's supersized Gourgeist one spot above James's Inkay. I just thought Gourgeist was more versatile than Inkay. I mean, its moveset was pretty cool, even as a Punkaboo, and it has the advantage of being used in Pokemon showcases, which adds to its development. Gourgeist may not have the flashiest resume, but it was a solid all-around Pokemon throughout the entire XY series, and the episode that it evolved in showed off the emotional connection between Gourgeist and Jessie, although it didn't get too much development past that episode. Number 11, Jessie's Yanmega. Just missing out on the top 10 is Yanmega, one of the few Pokemon that Team Rocket actually obtained in a villainous way. This kid named Tyler, who had just started his Pokemon journey, was trying to capture his first ever Pokemon, and after battling a Yanma, Jessie swooped in and caught it while it was still weak. After initially sending it to Giovanni, Yanma got rejected, got sent back to Jessie, and almost immediately evolved into Yanmega, making it one of Jessie's strongest Pokemon straight off the bat. I mean, you could make this case for Yanmega being Jessie's strongest Pokemon ever. It was pretty powerful. Add onto that some impressive contest performances, and Yanmega definitely made its mark despite only being on Jessie's team for about 100 episodes. Number 10, James's Cacnea. Let's start off with a fun fact. James's Cacnea is the only Cacnea ever to have appeared in the anime. We've seen Cacturne before in the anime, but no other Cacnea. Funny enough, James's Carnivine also holds the distinction of being the only one of its species to have ever appeared in the show. But like I said earlier, I think James's Cacnea was a more interesting version of Carnivine. After the emotional departure of Arbok and Weezing at the start of Team Rocket's time in Hoenn, Cacnea immediately stepped in and filled the void left by Jessie and James's original Pokemon. James would continue to have Cacnea on his team for nearly a series and a half, which means there's too much for me to really include in just this short ranking video. Cacnea carried on the tradition of giving James some PDA whenever it came out of its Pokeball. It competed in some contests with Jessie, and overall it was just a very fun and loyal partner to James. The one skill it lacked in was battling, and that's what caused James to ultimately part ways with Cacnea in one of the most unique ways to ever write a Pokemon out of the show, when James left Cacnea with Gardenia in order to train with the Grass-type gym leader. Number 9, James's Mareanie. A lot of James's Pokemon really follow the same trends, don't they? Mareanie may not have been a grass type, but it was another spiky or prickly Pokemon that really loved its trainer, and it wasn't afraid to show it. Of course, Mareanie has probably loved James more than any of his other Pokemon, which I guess you could say is unique. Having been James's only Pokemon in Alola, Mareanie got a lot of screen time and development despite remaining unevolved throughout Sun and Moon. It was Team Rocket's first Pokemon to ever use a Z-move, and although it may not have ever got to marry its trainer, it did win him the only official battle Jessie and James have ever had against one another, so that's gotta earn some respect. Number 8, Jessie's Mimikyu. Team Rocket's Alola Pokemon bonded closely together during Sun and Moon, which isn't always the case with Jessie and James's Pokemon. That's the nice side of Jessie's Mimikyu though, and really, it's Mimikyu's dark side that got it so high up on this list. It seemed like a no-brainer to give Team Rocket a Mimikyu in order to antagonize Ash's Pikachu, and their rivalry was pretty epic. Jessie and Mimikyu may not have ever been totally in sync with one another, but if they had been, Mimikyu would be another Pokemon in the conversation for Team Rocket's strongest ever. In addition to that, there's the whole nightmare-inducing backstory to Mimikyu. I mean, this thing constantly gave Meowth and Wobbuffet the creeps, and I feel like there was even more story potential for Mimikyu's character, but it just didn't get enough screen time to show it. Oh well, at least Team Rocket's Alolan family is still living together happily ever after. Number 7, Jessie's Dustox. Now we're getting into the real heavy hitters on this list. Jessie had Dustox in her party for over 250 episodes, and that alone should count for something in this ranking. In Hoenn, Dustox was Jessie's main contest Pokemon. It may not have been very successful at contests in Hoenn, but that doesn't mean Dustox wasn't trying its hardest and putting on some good performances. Their initial struggles in the Advanced Generation series just made it all the more sweet when Diamond and Pearl rolled around, and finally, after failure, Jessie finally won her first ever contest, and it was thanks to Dustox. Then there's the episode when Dustox got released. Like I said before, Dustox had been with Jessie for 250 episodes, so any release episode was going to be emotional, but man, this was like a better version of Bye Bye Butterfree in my opinion. That may be a hot take because it's Jessie we're talking about and not Ash, but for real, Jessie having to destroy Dustox's Pokeball because Dustox just didn't want to leave her side, it's so good and so sad too. Number 6, James's Victory Bell. Time for us to finally talk about some Team Rocket OGs, starting with James's Victory Bell. This was the original Grass-type Pokemon that would hurt James every time he used it. To this day, Victory Bell's outrageous cry and clamping down on James's head is hilarious.
And I choose you, Victory Bell! Open up! Let me out of here!
That just goes to show James is hard to swallow.
Victory Bell was James's secondary Pokemon for most of the original series, and it was more of a tactical Pokemon, knowing moves like Sleep Powder to cause havoc. But really, it was mainly comic relief, and it was pretty good in that role. As the original series progressed into Johto, Victory Bell became a little more serious, and James used it more frequently in battles. Ultimately, after over 200 episodes with James, he was forced to trade Victory Bell to the Magikarp salesman, as I mentioned before. This was a really strange way to write one of Team Rocket's Pokemon out of the show, but I guess that's kind of a trend. Anyways, after Victory Bell was traded over to the Magikarp salesman, he quickly realized that it wasn't going to obey him, so he just kicked it to the curb, which happened to be at the exact same time that Jessie sent James's second Victory Bell flying, and this fateful encounter led to love at first sight, and James's 2 Victory Bell were never seen or heard from again. I think that story is ridiculous, but I guess that's very fitting for James's Victory Bell. Number 5, James's Weezing, and number 4, Jessie's Arbok. Okay, Arbok and Weezing are just so close. I feel like I have to talk about them at the same time because you cannot talk about one without bringing up the other. This was Team Rocket's original duo, their first Pokemon back as an Ekans and a Koffing, and both were mainstays throughout the entire original series. Both of their personalities were developed really well early on, like in the episode when everyone's Pokemon got separated from their trainers, and how cool was it when Koffing and Ekans pushed themselves past their limit and evolved because of how badly their trainers wanted them to. You can call it nostalgia if you want, but I just thought this original crew was so good, so funny, and so entertaining. Having spent over 270 episodes alongside Jessie and James, these 2 Pokemon are both deserving of making the top 5 in this list. Arbok gets the slight edge for me because of its versatility. I mean, it's even capable of breathing underwater, as if it wasn't already threatening enough. And remember when I said Dustox's release was sad? Don't even get me started on the episode when Jessie and James released Arbok and Weezing. Let's just talk about something happier instead. Number 3, James's Mime Jr. Okay, so if you guys think I'm overrating any Pokemon on this list, it's probably going to be Mime Jr. I will admit that it is my personal favorite Pokemon that Team Rocket has ever had, but I do try to make these rankings fairly objective, so I think Mime Jr. deserves to be this high up on the list. After replacing James's Chimecho during the Battle Frontier saga, Mime Jr. became a permanent fixture on James's team all the way through Diamond and Pearl, meaning it spent over 230 episodes with James, and it was absolutely adorable in every single one of them. That's what gets Mime Jr. so high on this list for me. Its cute personality is my favorite of any of Jessie or James's Pokemon, and the way it mimed James's every move and was a constant ray of light and positivity in what's supposed to be a villainous team was the perfect contrast in my opinion. Mime Jr. essentially caught itself after James accidentally dropped one of his own Pokeballs, and it wanted to join James's team because it knew James was a nice person, and it was because of Mime Jr. that we got some of James's most wholesome moments ever. I mean, they even spent an entire episode in the Advanced Generation series doing the right thing and winning a Pokemon orienteering competition fair and square. Meanwhile, Jessie and Meowth were busy trying to rig the competition and steal Pokemon all day. I just love that contrast. Mime Jr. was never much of a battler, but it did participate in a lot of contests with Jessie, which makes sense because it's a very appealing Pokemon. Despite only knowing 3 moves, it used Mimic a lot, which gave it a ton of versatility as well. The only knock I have against Mime Jr. is that it was another one of Jessie and James' Pokemon that was just unceremoniously handed over to Team Rocket HQ, so it wasn't given the proper send-off that it deserved. Oh well, what could have been? Number 2, Jessie's Seviper. In case you haven't noticed yet, I really take longevity in the anime as a very critical factor in rankings such as this, and Jessie caught Seviper at the beginning of the Advanced Generation series, and it remained on her team all the way through Diamond and Pearl. If a Pokemon remained on someone's team for 370 episodes, then it must have accomplished a lot. Even though Ash and friends always seem to have an answer for it, Jessie's Seviper is a really strong Pokemon. In fact, she had to fight it herself in order to be able to catch Seviper, which was unique. It then became Jessie's primary battler for 2 straight series of the anime, as well as being a constant presence in Jessie's contest pursuits. Even though I had nothing but praise for Arbok, I think Seviper was Jessie's superior serpent. It was definitely stronger in battle, and even though it only knew 4 moves, Seviper was just as versatile as Arbok, including taking over as the resident smoke creator for the team using its haze attack. It also helps that Seviper just had more to do than Arbok, with Jessie competing in contests in both Hoenn, Kanto, and Sinnoh. It gave Seviper a lot of meaningful screen time. And even if it was never the best Pokemon, it was such a consistent presence for so long that I feel like it deserves to be recognized as one of the best Pokemon that Jessie or James have ever owned. One of the best Pokemon, but not the best. Number 1, Jessie's Wobbuffet. Was it ever really in any doubt? After I clarified that Meowth wasn't going to be included in this ranking, it had to have been pretty obvious to most of you who was going to end up on top of this ranking. In fact, do I even need to explain why Jessie's Wobbuffet is the number 1 Pokemon on this list? I probably don't, but I'll give it a shot anyways. Looking back on it, it's very strange that Jessie's longest serving team member ended up with her by pure accident. If you remember back to Lickitung's entry on this list, there was this random trainer named Benny who was looking to trade his Pokemon. That Pokemon was Wobbuffet, and to think no one wanted it back then. Jessie only traded for it after she got knocked into the trade machine and Lickitung's Pokeball accidentally fell into place, but it was that chance moment that spawned an incredible legacy. When I try to sum up why Wobbuffet is the best Team Rocket Pokemon ever, I think this is the best way to put it. Before Wobbuffet, it was the Team Rocket trio, but once Wobbuffet got added to the team, it eventually changed into the Team Rocket quartet. Wobbuffet is just as synonymous to the group now as Meowth is, and that's testament to how great of a character Wobbuffet has been to the show. Its constant social unawareness and overexcitement was annoying to Jessie at first, but Wobbuffet's lovable personality eventually became endearing. And now I think it's pretty obvious that Wobbuffet is probably Jessie's favorite Pokemon ever. When it temporarily left the show during Best Wishes, it just felt right when it returned to the group starting in XY, and I don't think it's ever leaving again. It's been a part of the show for over 800 episodes at this point, and I think it's undeniable that Jessie's Wobbuffet deserves the number 1 spots in this ranking. With that being said, I'm sure you've got all kinds of opinions about this list, so let me know what I got right and what I got wrong down in the comments. Personally, my favorite Team Rocket Pokemon is Mime Jr., but let me know what yours is. As always, thanks so much for watching this video, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time.